Yes, sir. My name is Michael. I live in Rockingham, North Carolina. I have a question concerning Matthew 24, 20th verse. But pray that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. I hope you can explain that verse so I can understand what it really means. I appreciate your answer on that. Thank you.
Michael, we're so glad you called in. Stephen, can you explain this verse to Michael?
Absolutely. Michael, let's kind of pull back a little bit. This text here is in the middle of Matthew chapters 24 and 25. And this is what we call the Olivet Discourse. It's a sermon where Jesus is preaching from the Mount of Olives, and he's preaching this 3 days before he dies on a cross. And so it's a very significant kind of a last message. And what he's doing is he's delivering this sermon to a select group of his disciples, and he's answering the question about his second coming. Now, when I say second coming, I'm talking about his return to earth. His second coming is a two-part coming. The first part is what we call the rapture. That's where he comes in the clouds. The second part at the end of the tribulation is when he comes, not in the clouds, but to earth. The first part of this second coming, when he comes in the clouds, he comes for us. That is, he comes for the believer, for the church. The second part of his second coming is when he comes with us. We're already with him. So when you study the end of Revelation, we're coming with him, mounted on horses as he returns to earth. Now, this particular verse you referenced is the Lord's warning for those living in the tribulation. This particular part of the passage is we're right in the middle of the tribulation. The Antichrist is trying to slaughter the believer, trying to slaughter the remaining Jews. He wants to void the promises of Christ that Israel will see him returning when he comes at the end of the tribulation. And he describes the terror of this point in the tribulation where the Antichrist is breaking his treaty with Israel. He's invading the promised land. He's beginning in verse 21 of Matthew 24, where you have the final 3.5 years of the tribulation. He graphically outlines this period of time. And he's basically saying, you're going to be running for your life, those who are alive at this point in time, those who've believed the gospel, believed in Christ. The Antichrist is attempting to slaughter them, to kill them, and they're running for their lives. And he's very, very graphic here. He's saying, it's woe to the person if this is in the middle of the winter, or if you're expecting a child, it's going to be very difficult to run from the Antichrist.
So, Stephen, just a point of clarification that during this period of tribulation, there has been a gospel witness, and people have come to faith.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So we on this side of the tribulation, believers are raptured,
right.
But there's a new host of believers on the earth whom the Antichrist hates.
Right.
Okay.
That's exactly right, and that's what Jesus is describing here. So when you see, for instance, Michael, at the heading of Matthew 24, you might have an outline like I do that might say something like signs of Christ's return. Don't be confused. This is not talking about the rapture. This is talking about the second phase of his return, which is Jesus's literal physical return to earth and the establishment of a literal kingdom on earth that will last for 1,000 years, and you can get a little more detail about that when you read Revelation chapter 19 and 20.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Stephen. So in the specific verse that Michael referenced, that Jesus is giving advice to people living in the tribulation to pray that their flight may not be in winter or on the Sabbath. He's simply encouraging them to pray that when this time comes when they have to flee, that it not be snowing, it not be the middle of the night, that they can get out when they need to get out.